Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast. We're about to get into it here because the hospital doesn't shut down clinics because of an IT issue. They shut down clinics because they've lost control. And this week, the University of Mississippi Medical Center pulled the plug on its network after a ransomware attack knocked its systems offline, including Epic. That's their medical record system. So here's where they're at right now as it stands. Outpatient visits have been canceled. Elective procedures are paused, and patients are reporting that they're showing up for chemo and they're being told to wait. And here's the part executives should hear clearly. When leadership says we shut down all network systems as a precaution, that's not a little minor technical detail. That's containment failure, or at a minimum, containment uncertainty. So today's show, we're breaking down what this really means down in Mississippi, not just for healthcare, but for any organization that thinks buying security tools equals being cyber mature. We're going to talk about that a lot today, cyber maturity, and what that means for your business and why it matters. So this is Security Squawk, the podcast where we translate cybersecurity chaos into business reality. On this show, there's no hype, no vendor spin, just what leaders need to understand before it costs them. So let's get into it. Andre, you're bringing us this story out of Mississippi. This feels like breaking news territory. Hospitals don't close clinics lightly. What's going on?
Yeah, so first of all, how's everybody doing today? You went straight for the show, Brian?
Yes, sir.
Doing great.
All right, yeah. So unfortunately in Mississippi, we have their largest, basically state-run hospital, and they have their outpatient clinic services. So right now, two things are happening. We have their 35 medical centers are all closed, not taking any new patients. And then on the hospital side, they unfortunately also have, they're still taking people, but they're still going back to the paper and pen. And I went on Facebook, and I'm going to read a couple of comments, but I saw one person, for example, they wrote, "Do you suggest high-risk pregnant patients temporarily try to find somewhere else if we can't do our scheduled appointment?" And someone else wrote, "The cyber attack at UMMC has been awful. My family member had a procedure on the 18th, and suddenly there was no internet, phones, fax, EHR, tube system, everything was down. Doctors and nurses had to communicate with their cell phones. My family members had to start keeping notes on their cell phones as far as what medications they needed to take, and lab results are not coming back, and et cetera, et cetera." So this is a mess, both at the hospital side and then also on the medical center side. So that's and what we see now is they have to essentially shut down their entire system, and that's kind of concerning, is because there's one thing if your Epic, which is their EHR software, if that goes down, that can either be server-based, cloud-based, or whatever the case is. But the fact that their faxes had to be turned off, their phone systems, their emails, even their website is not working. That tells me that there's something bigger in play, and it's really unfortunate. So I'll let you guys go from there, but afterwards I'll come back and talk about some practical takeaways we can also see from this.
Yeah, so a whole nother angle that is not really mentioned here. Couple of things. Mississippi is one of the more poor states. There's a lot more rural in Mississippi. I mean, there's rural everywhere, but like we're talking here, always, this is critical infrastructure, but this is exceptionally critical infrastructure when you're talking about a mostly rural state like Mississippi. So that's the part that jumps out at me. Areas that are already underserved, now probably plenty of areas have literally nothing at all because of this. And, whenever healthcare gets shut down, clinics and things like that, it's never good. But this just seems to be an exceptionally difficult one.
Yep, absolutely. So here we go again, right? What do you think happened here, guys, in terms of like containment? Like, why didn't they trust containment? Because that's what we're talking about here. They had to shut down everything, right? Which means that they can't contain it. So when you hear that, what is that kind of what pops in your brain, or what do you first think of when? Because I know my brain goes to like these guys weren't prepared whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the difference, right? That's the blast radius that Randy likes to reference on the show all the time, right? This is a classic example of an organization that didn't have a handle on blast radius and thought they were fine. Like, I don't think anybody in this organization probably thought they would ever be dealing with this, number one. And number two, I don't think that they ever thought in a million years that they weren't fine, right? Some vendor, somebody that they trusted along the way, gave them reassurance that they were all good. I mean, the fact that they have ransomware is one thing. The fact that they have to shut the whole entire network down to deal with it tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Where we sit, right? And this is where people who don't know, don't understand this stuff, will come at us. They'll send us messages. They'll attack us saying, you don't know. You shouldn't be saying this stuff. No, we do know. Because this same pattern plays out every time with all these attacks. As soon as we start seeing how these organizations react, we can put a pretty good idea together about and put a pretty good story together about where they were at with their cyber maturity before the event, right? And we're going to get into why that's important throughout this whole show, right? Cyber maturity. And the bottom line is, guys, the cyber maturity is what these cyber criminals are going after now. They're not going after like tools and stuff like that. They're going after your cyber maturity, and they're testing it, and they're seeing if you can withstand what they can throw at it, right? But their arsenal is built around testing your cyber maturity, not breaking through one or two tools. And if you don't understand what that means, I would caution you and implore you to figure out what that means, right? Reach out to Randy, Andre, and I. We're not hard to find on the internet. Get a hold of somebody. And if you're listening to like one person, and if you've been listening to one person for many years, maybe it's time for a new perspective. Thoughts, guys?
Yeah, and I wanted to also wrap it up with saying about one more thing. A comment is the gift shop cafeteria unable to accept credit cards. So just going back to like, we call it tabletop exercise, but I even give it another name. Let's talk about doing which is also tabletop, but it's like, what's your downtime procedure? Like, imagine if your QuickBooks went down, if your CRM went down, if your phones went down, like all of those things you need to actually practice, and not just like in theory, but more of like, okay, let's unplug the internet. All right, let's have this department now, you got, an hour to, go ahead and go through your procedures, but let's get back and getting the notifications to our clients, or, whatever it is that business does. But there needs to be like, okay, we can only be down for a certain amount of time. So we need to kind of practice this, and we need to make sure that everybody, all shifts know that if XYZ stops working, this is the plan, and we've tested it before. And I think that's kind of where we need a lesson learned that can be from this. Not to say the hospital doesn't have this right now, but nevertheless, all businesses can learn from this.
They did mention in their press release that they're following downtime procedures. But, what does that mean? You also mentioned, Andre, that the credit card machines were down, like in the cafeteria and stuff.
Yeah.
I also noticed their website is down. like there's a lot of stuff here that's down, and their official like statements, they're saying that their equipment is still working at like the hospital and things like that. But you have to think about this, like their hospitals, there's one children's hospital in the entire state. There's one level 1 trauma center in the entire state. These guys own both of them or run both of them. And you know, they're saying that their website's down. Like, I don't know if they have even a clue. Brian, you mentioned this when you were talking. I don't even know if they have a clue how deep this goes, which is.
But what would a website even have to do, right? Because most likely their website is hosted outside of their control, right? Like you would think, like, all right, yeah, let's go ahead and keep the website and let's just update that. Hey, let's update our patients. But for it just to be literally down.
Yeah. And we also know that that's a psyop to get people to pay. They did mention that they're in talks with the criminals. So that could just be obviously it's real, it's down. That could also be a psyop to get them to the table faster. But this is a mess, man.
Yep. And let's not ignore the future, right? And the second phase that we know is coming, right? Attacker communication, depending on what they have, right? They could communicate obviously with the hospital directly. They could start reaching out to patients. They could start reaching out to people that work there, and threatening and extorting them. And that's an expectation that you need to have. This hospital probably isn't prepared for if this is where they're at, right? When they say we're evaluating whether data was accessed, that's often what we see as the early prelude to extortion negotiation and disclosure sequencing, right? Meaning like they're going to start telling you what really happened, right? So the moral of the story here is, just like we're learning with, I showed the guys an article this morning when we were preparing for the show where Change Healthcare is getting sued 2 years later by a hospital who realized that they lost a lot more money when they couldn't bill because of their ransomware attack almost 3 years ago at this point, right? And the bottom line is this isn't over when the systems come back online.
Right.
And that's it. So
what's that?
What's that?
Yes. You made me think of that statistic that I believe it's 80% of all businesses that get breached once get breached again.
Oh yeah.
Because they didn't know how it happened in the first place. So since they didn't know how it happened, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg thing. They didn't know how it happened, so they weren't able to research how it happened and then fix how it happened because they didn't have any insight into all that. So they just go in and think they're good. And for 4 out of 5 of them, they're not. So the bad guys come back. So
100%. And not only that, this stems back to leadership in organizations over trusting whoever they're over trusting. Right? So they're going to over trust whoever's doing the recovery, Randy. And when they recover improperly, that's when they get hit again. And that's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's really getting a second set of eyes and stop over trusting these people that work for you. That's really what it is. Get independent third parties that don't have a skin in the game telling you whether or not, look, it could be your brother, it could be your best friend, it could be your wife, it could be your husband. I don't know, right? Who's running your stuff, right? So you got to put all that aside. You got to take emotion out of it, and you got to get third parties in here who don't care. They just want to give you the information and tell you the truth, right? So at least you're prepared. That's the only way to prepare. Andre, Randy, and I have seen too many organizations go down like this because they trusted the person way more than they should have, or the organization, or whoever was protecting them.
Yeah, reminds me of that meme of the CEO giving a thank you award to the IT guy who got him through the ransomware, but it was really that IT guy who wasn't doing his job in the first place that got him, that got him there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
buddy.
Well, I'm sure that happens out there somewhere, but a lot of times it's the IT guy on a flimsy budget doing a phenomenal job with the tiny little budget that he has, which is
Right.
not near enough. So, but yes, that's funny.
All right, good one. We'll keep everyone updated. Obviously, we'll follow up on this story. It's a big one. It's going to be a big one. I mean, no doubt. I mean, we're 2 days into it, and we're barely scratching the surface with what the fallout's actually going to be from all of this. So, look, if you're in that area and you do need medical help, I would make sure you have a backup plan, right? Because the hospital that you're in your area doesn't have one. So it's really on to you to figure out what your backup plan is, right? Maybe you need to move somewhere temporarily where you're closer to a hospital if that's feasible for you, right? These are things you need to think about. And these, again, we've talked about this a million times throughout the years in this show, guys. These rural hospitals that don't have other infrastructure available. Like I have 7 different hospitals I could drive to within like 30 minutes. Right. Most people don't have that. Right.
You have 7 states you can drive to in 30 minutes.
That's right. I mean, so no doubt. So,
but you're right, man. That's a big deal. It's a really
Sure
big
is.
deal in rural areas.
No doubt. So we got to pay attention to this because, this could happen in your backyard, and depending on your situation, you can learn from it. So, all right, Randy. Ransomware groups. Let's zoom us out a little bit because, the hospital story doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? So ransomware groups explode to an all-time high in 2025, and you want to talk about it. So
yeah,
what do you want to talk about?
Well, okay. So
I want to give a shout out to Luke. What's up, Luke? Good to see you.
So first off, this is not anything that takes the 3 of us by surprise, or if you watch our show on the regular, this is not something that should take anybody by surprise that watches the show, because we've talked about this. There's been predictions that it was going to drop off, that it was going to go away, and it never really did. But here's the deal: what we're seeing is an outgrowth of what we've been predicting. We're seeing a higher use of AI. We're seeing times when these groups are collaborating. They're like doing a coordinated attack. They're collaborating. They're using ransomware as a service, which means they build out the platform, and then they can sell that platform to semi-technical criminals who are able to get the ransomware in a place where they can make money. We've seen where they're taking and rewriting the malware in languages like Rust, which give them more access. This is crazy. Gives them more access to Linux-based machines like VMware, things like that. So like infrastructure. We're also seeing that they're getting better at a structured ecosystem where they have access brokers, developers, negotiators. I even in my research for this saw where they even in some of the cases were offering a lawyer to talk to you like on the chat or whatever. Obviously, that would be a dumb idea because it's not a lawyer who's going to come in and fight for you.
Right.
It's the bad guys. And I think really, Brian, the bottom line is, okay, so we talk a lot about spear phishing. We talk a lot about which that's a targeted phishing attack, like going after a company, the C-level staff, or even the CEO of a company. We talk about that. We talk about how they're using AI to impersonate like actual people, spoofing and things like that. And those are targeted. But I really think the growth here is not about targeting. I think the growth is about scanning, which is kind of crazy because you're doing a whole section on FortiGate edge devices, and I won't take away your thunder there, but with AI, with the collaboration that these guys have, they can scan the internet, find vulnerabilities like on edge devices, find vulnerabilities, and use the AI to basically get in there. So bottom line is, it doubled in 2025, the number of reported attacks. The number of organizations that are getting involved has also dramatically increased, which is funny because what did we say when we talked about the first known AI-led attack? What did we say? We said this lowers the bar for entry into the market. It makes everybody a world-class hacker, right? They can use AI. So that kind of fits in with what we've been saying. So I know this isn't like shocking news to anybody, but it is something that I wanted to point out and I wanted to briefly bring up and discuss, and would love to hear y'all's thoughts.
Well, all of this can be prevented. A couple of things. MFA enforce, especially with emails and VPNs. Having a good endpoint defense, antivirus that's monitored 24/7, that when everybody else is sleeping, there's actions that can be taken to isolate the computers, shut down the systems, etc. Testing the backups, having the tabletop exercises as we mentioned in the last article, and then just having that incident response plan. And I would say the last thing is training, especially as we're mentioning with AI and how it can now write emails better and match our American, tone and things like that. So we have to make sure that our employees are prepared for that as well. Mm-hmm. So it's all preventable.
We're also seeing a huge growth in the mid-market, because enterprise level, a lot of times they've got a lot of this stuff locked down, but we're seeing a big growth there in that mid-market. And we're also seeing, we've mentioned both of these before, we're also seeing a decrease in dwell time. In other words, they're not having to live off the land as long until they start doing their thing because they're using AI. And I know, Brian, you were about to say something.
No, I wasn't, but I agree with you guys. It boils down for me that the barrier of entry for these guys just keeps getting lower and lower, which is insane. Mm-hmm. And it's just going to get harder and harder for businesses to deal with these guys, right? And I guess the way I look at it and the way this is playing out is like cybersecurity, 10 years ago, those were the people who were talking about cybersecurity, saying you need to protect yourself. That wasn't the middle or the end. That was the beginning. We're saying hey, this is now a thing. You used to be able to plug your computer in the internet, expose it to the internet, and nobody would bother with it. The world changed at some point, right? And cyber criminals realized that all these devices that are hanging out there with their ass flapping in the wind, we can make money off this. And that's when cybersecurity people started saying, yo, businesses, you need to start doing something about this. And we're still in that phase. We have not seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to cyber crime yet.
Wow.
We're still climbing the mountain, folks.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to beat your business. It's going to be really hard for you to stay in business if I think what's going to play out here in the next 5 years plays out. It's going to be really hard, because not only is it hard just to do business with all the regulations and taxes and everything it takes to just run a business. Now you got to worry about a cyber criminal over your right shoulder all the time because they're that good and our defenses just suck. That's where we're at. Yeah. And that's the world we live in right now. So criminal maturity is increasing here, folks. Operational discipline on the attacker side is improving at a rate that you wouldn't believe. And I've always said this, they are doing it faster than we're doing defense. They're not just encrypting and hoping. Your defenses are hope and hope and prayers for the most part. They're strategic. They're surgical. They're stealing data. They're negotiating, and they're experts at that. And they're applying pressure to high dependency sectors like healthcare, where downtime equals leverage. And that's the pattern. Healthcare, public sector, critical infrastructure, low downtime tolerance equals high coercion value. And this isn't random chaos, it's economic targeting. Right? So, I don't know, guys. If victim growth rate is doubling, I think that tells us something uncomfortable. Right?
Yeah.
That companies' defensive maturity is not scaling at the same rate. And attackers are finding consistent systemic weaknesses to exploit, and companies large and small. We're going to talk about it today, and we're going to get into it with my article, right? And it's crazy how we've ended up in this place where these cyber criminals have it so easy and businesses just don't seem to care.
Yeah. And we always talk about supply chain attacks, but wait till these supply chain attacks are the AI agents or, integrations that they have. That's also going to, be a big way that these hackers are going to be able to get into.
So my goal with all this was to, talk about and connect all of our topics to something bigger. And I've been following this, and I talk about this a lot. I've seen extensive research and exploitation around Fortinet vulnerabilities, which, quite frankly, man, it's just like this company and their hardware is the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to talking about cyber attacks and vulnerabilities. The amount of vulnerabilities that this company has put out over the past year, it just is mind-boggling, right? And just you gotta wonder if they even give a shit about security, right? These edge device exploits, and between that, the hardware plus users with VPN credential harvesting and things like that, it just, again, this is what I'm talking about. This is the technical stuff that I say when I say we're making it too easy for them here, folks, right? And I guess what I want to say here is the vulnerability itself really isn't the story, and none of these vulnerabilities are, right? The maturity response is what the story here is, right? Because if you don't understand that we live in a world where hardware with vulnerabilities that cyber criminals can exploit to get inside of your business and do bad stuff is the norm and the system that we live in, then you're just starting from the wrong spot. If you're buying a Fortinet device thinking this is going to save us, this is going to block everything, you're wrong. You're dead wrong. The real mindset behind having a device like this in your business will be, if that thing fails, what's behind it to save us? What is going to tell us, or what is going to alert us that somebody is doing something nefarious or getting through on that box that's supposed to be protecting us, but now it's failing? What is the thing behind that that's going to tell us that that's happening? And that's where we're failing to understand that that's maturity. That's looking at your situation going, okay, if that fails, what's the fallback? Is our ass left there flapping in the wind, or do we have some protection if this Fortinet device that we purchased that now has a vulnerability that attackers are exploiting, that's not going to get detected by our SOC team? How are we going to know that we're still protected in that situation? Right? That is the answer that CEOs and real leaders should be asking their technical people, and then they should be testing what their technical people are telling them and putting in place with third parties. That is how you figure this stuff out, folks. I'm not going to tell you what the silver bullet is behind it, because that's too easy. I'm giving you the process that you follow in order to do this the right way. Right? So here's what attackers are doing. This is the things that they're doing to test your maturity, right? They're testing whether you patch fast enough. They're testing whether you rotate credentials. They test whether you rebuild trust boundaries or you even have them in the first place after you're compromised. That's what Randy's talking about when they come and hit you again. Hey, you didn't segment the first time. We were able to take down your whole entire hospital. Now we're going to hit you again. Did you segment this time? That's literally what Randy's talking about. They're going to validate whether you have segmentation or not. If you do, they might turn around and walk away. If you don't, they're going to nail you. And then if they see any of this stuff in place, I swear to you, I promise you, they don't come back. But if you don't have this stuff, they come back 100% of the time. Cyber criminals are probing for governance weakness, not just unpatched devices. That's the real conversation here, folks. Guys, I'm going to bring you into the conversation. Thoughts here? Thoughts on my perspective? Agree, disagree? Go ahead.
No, I totally agree. And, Fortinet is one of those firewalls that can probably last a good 5, 7, 10 years and just keep on chugging. But from my understanding, one of the things, especially with some of the older models, is that they can keep on chugging without a security license. So if you did have some, and usually if you're going to see a Fortinet, this is a company that has at least 20 employees. Your little basic IT guy is not, he's not going to Best Buy and buying a Fortinet router. So someone who at least values the name of the Fortinet will purchase this, set it up. But then if it's set up, set it and forget it. And then, silly things, admin password, the default, able to access the firewall from away, which is convenient for the technician. But then again, if you can access it from external IP address, port number, and then it's the default password, then it just did nobody any good. So I always kind of cringe when I go and I typically see a Fortinet or the red Watchdog. Was it Watchdog? I think it's called routers. And usually when I see those, and then they tell me they don't have an IT person or something like that, there's vulnerability. So you got to be able, for the business owners listening, in addition to refreshing your computers every 3 to 5 years, you also need to make sure that your firewalls are being monitored, protected, and then replaced if they're no longer getting updates. But as we saw here, the bad guys are walking in. It's not that Fortinet necessarily is doing anything wrong. It's just misconfigurations and just abandonment by the IT person, and that's how they're able to get in.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to you made me think about, Andre, is your stereotypical network person is kind of not a big fan of automatic updates. Am I right? I know we've both interacted with people. We all three have interacted with people like that. If we get even thinking back all the way to the Rackspace hack a few years ago, what did it boil down to? They had some old equipment that they were afraid to update because they thought it would break it. And I know people that are like that in this part of the IT world.
Dude, I know. I'm just going to piggyback on that real quick. Sorry to interrupt you. Dude, I know IT guys. I've had these conversations. And if you don't think this is real, I swear to you, this is real. I've been doing IT for almost 30 years, right? I talk to these IT guys on every day, and I've had hundreds of these conversations where IT guys are like, I don't want to deal with that. So just like because I'm so busy.
Yep.
Like I got so much on my plate that I don't even want to touch that over there. Like that thing just because look, these 0 days, they don't come up like when you're not busy.
Yep.
Right. They come up all the time. Right.
That's right.
And they will not get to things because they have this whole other list of shit that they've deemed more important than that. And that's how it plays out. Right, Randy?
Yes. And it's a mind shift. You have to shift from that to where you're updating your machines automatically, your website's getting updated automatically, your web server's getting updated automatically, your firewalls are getting updated automatically. And if something breaks, that's now your job to get it all updated automatically and be in the mindset that's a better security posture to do that. Now, you could potentially say, and this may or may not be controversial, but maybe if it's a critical update, you delay it, 24 hours. And if it's non-critical, maybe delay it a week, to where that way, like if somebody gets hired new at CrowdStrike and wants to impress the office and they roll out an update without checking it, it doesn't break everything that you have. But at the end of the day, this kind of stuff really needs to be automated. And I would suggest, if you're not using a brand of hardware that can't update automatically, I would move away from it. It's not worth it. And I don't know if Fortinet offers that or not. I'm not a Fortinet guy. If they do, that's wonderful. I think personally, like I said, you should have it turned on. And then you deal with the consequences of that. That's better than having vulnerabilities just sitting out there all the time. That's my 2 cents on that. And
sure.
I'm
gonna add to it, because I just want to kind of give the C-suite perspective of what you just said, right? I believe firmly, and I will give this advice to anybody that works with our company, that the leadership decision that you need to make around, I need you guys to fill in for me 1 second. I got to step away. Go.
Yep. You know where his sentence was going, or I can add something else.
I don't know where he was going, so go if you want to add something else. I have a couple things I'll add too when you're done.
Yeah. So this just goes back to, we talked about like the ownership, right? So as a CEO, the way I'm seeing it, right, most of my clients never doubt what we're doing for them. But I think that's also a problem, because if you don't ask the questions, even if how dumb they may sound, it's like, hey, are we testing our backups? Do we have everything up to date? Like it's kind of similar. Like you want to trust your doctor, but that doesn't mean you're not going to go on ChatGPT and just like kind of put in some stuff, ask some questions to ChatGPT, come back to your doctor just to have that conversation and make sure that they're giving you the best possible care. So, and again, owners are busy. Owners have other things. This is why I'm paying you for, so you can just handle it. But and I'm not trying to now point the finger of ownership away from the IT person, but I think it's also important for the owner to or management or the board, whoever, to just ask questions to get the conversation, and then that way, if it is a money issue or if it's something of a time issue, then it can be like, oh, we're not doing that. You know what? That's pretty important for our business. Let's go ahead and do that.
Appreciate you stepping in for me there. I took care of a little disturbance in my office. Yeah, man, it just goes back to cyber maturity for me, right? And all the things that we're talking about today boil down to what you're doing in the C-suite, right? And Randy, I just wanted to expand on what you were talking about, right? That decision, right, around, it's called a patching strategy, right? And if you're leaving your patching strategy to IT, you're just not getting this, right? Because Randy's right. Like, you should have devices that update automatically, right? And your IT guy's going to go, oh, but that could break the whole system too. Like if a bad update goes out or something like that. 100%, right? Yep. We've got this figured out. We've been doing this for, like I said, 30 years I've been patching systems. Guess what? Back in the day, I'm not going to say 20 years ago, we didn't patch things and systems went down. But over time, we got smart about this stuff and we figured out processes and strategies where we can deploy these patches with automatic updates turned on, and it doesn't ruin our day. Right. Or it doesn't ruin our week, and it doesn't piss anybody off because it doesn't take systems down. Right. And that's called a legit patching strategy. And if you know what you're doing in IT and you know what you're doing in cybersecurity, you can accomplish what Randy's talking about in a safe way. And it's that simple. And real cybersecurity leadership, real IT leadership in a C-suite will force that in your organization. Right? It won't stop, or the buck usually stops with the IT guy going, oh, well, we can't do that. And nobody knows why. They just take his word for it. Right?
Yep.
Isn't that how it plays out? So So that's the bottom line. So listen, if you get value from this show, folks, share the show, right? If you're getting value from this breakdown, you want us to keep doing real cybersecurity talk like this, unfiltered executive cybersecurity advice and analysis, support the show. Go to buymeacoffee.com/security squawk. You know, independent media only survives if the audience that watches us can support us. So remember that. We turn down a lot of offers to bring on people who just want to promote their product or service, and we really avoid that kind of stuff to bring you stuff, real talk like this. So, you know, we don't have to cater to a vendor or a sponsor, right? So,
well, I don't know for YouTube, but my computer is running on a Lenovo right now. So
there you go, buddy. There you go. Hey, brought to you by Lenovo from Andre's house. So here we go. So, all right, guys. So let's wrap up the show. Randy's got to get to a meeting, so we'll let him go. Hospital shutting down clinics isn't a cybersecurity headline; it's a governance headline. The ransomware ecosystem is scaling. Edge vulnerabilities continue to surface and be a thorn in the side for businesses. And organizations that confuse tooling with maturity are being tested publicly. So the question isn't whether you'll face intrusion, it's whether you can contain it without turning off the lights. For Andre, Randy, you had to leave us, and the next episode, we're digging into a lot of things around cybersecurity and AI and how it's accelerating what's going on in the cybersecurity world. So make sure you stay tuned and pay attention to what the three of us are talking about, because AI is only going to be an accelerant for all the things that we talk about on this show. So this is Security Squawk. I'm Brian, signing off with Andre. Stay sharp, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.